What's up, everybody? Thanks for listening to the Whatcast. We hope you're doing good. Mike, we once were freezing, now we are burning.
Yeah, well, I've got the hoary testicles of old man winter just floating around the corner for me. But for right now, it's pretty fucking hot. But I know winter is coming, and he's gonna slap me in the face with his cold dick, and I'm gonna really dislike it.
You're gonna pucker your lips as much as you can so it doesn't hit your.
No, I'm gonna put my lips inward, close my mouth real tight. Get away from me! I don't want your ice dick in my face. I really need to get out of this part of the country, man.
Yeah, I mean, if the coming season's making you think of an old fucking mythological being slapping his junk on your face.
Yeah, well, not only my face, but like the collective face of the earth. Like it's like he drops trow and just, and there's a big bunch of snow and ice, and it fucking sucks.
Oh yeah,
old man winter, put your dick away. Nobody likes it.
He's like, no, this needs to happen.
Yeah. No, there's so many assholes up here that love it. Like, oh yeah, snowmobiling season. I don't give a fuck about snowmobile. I don't give a fuck about ice fishing. None of that shit. You can climb your glaciers yourself. I need to go south.
I know you don't spend a lot of time surfing YouTube, but maybe you've seen this one dude who lives in Alaska and he just goes camping in the most remote places and he ends up having to dig like 10-foot trenches in the snow.
It's
fucking wild.
I don't know if I've seen people that have done that, and like to stay warm, you dig a fucking hole in the snow.
Yeah.
Somehow, and then you're sleeping in the snow, and you've got a little igloo, and you're sleeping in the snow, but it keeps you warm, and you can stay warm with like a fucking reflective blanket and a tea light candle.
Yeah,
it's
crazy. He shows you how to do all that stuff, but he'll actually like chop up a bunch of wood and let it burn, like start a fire and let it burn for an hour, and then just bury all that hot charcoal and sleep on that.
Oh, good thinking.
Yeah,
people are crazy, man.
They are. I
would never, like, Alaska's a beautiful state. I would never want to live there.
No, what's enjoyable
because
about
of the winter, mainly. I fucking hate winter. And I hate really hot too, but more than I hate really hot, I fucking hate winter. And it's because of the snow and the ice mainly. Like, the cold temperatures suck, but I can deal with the cold. It's just the snow and the ice can go get bent.
Yeah.
And also, this is something you probably can't relate to, but because of our winters, it affects our cars. So we need a lot more repairs done to our cars because they use salt on the road to keep the roads free of ice, because the salt will prevent ice from forming on the roads, and it helps to melt the ice, and it also helps to fuck up the underside of your car. So we typically get a lot of damage to the frames of the car and the exhaust, and our brakes go quicker. Like, winter sucks. Fuck off, winter. I need to move. What a way to start the show, man. I haven't even just bitching about winter, and we're still like 3 months away. I feel like fucking Walmart might as well start playing Christmas music and get out the decorations. Fuck.
So what are we talking about? This is something we should have covered a little while ago.
We're talking about winter and Christmas, Mateo.
The whole time.
That's what we're talking about.
They got Christmas and Halloween decorations next to each other at the store now.
Yeah. Jeez. I know. It pisses me off. I should not see Christmas until, at the very least, at least give me fucking Halloween. At least give me Halloween before you start rolling out Christmas. Ideally, I would like for the Christmas to wait until Thanksgiving. Like maybe start a week before Thanksgiving, because it's not like there's Thanksgiving carols and decoration. I mean, that there's the occasional like turkey or pilgrim bullshit, but nothing like Halloween and Christmas. Those are the big guys. But I don't want to see Christmas next to my spooky stuff.
No. It's a season of Satan. Get out of here, Jesus.
I know. You're not even born yet. What the fuck you doing?
So what are we talking about tonight?
Tonight, we're talking about Jesus and ghosts. I mean, honestly, kind of, maybe.
Ooh.
In a certain way, I guess. I wanted to talk about the idea of paranormal and spiritual experiences maybe being related to manipulation of parts of your brain, and whether or not the manipulation is what causes the religious experience, or if the manipulation is what opens us up to the possibility of religious or paranormal experiences.
Ooh.
So what do you think of that? What do you make of that?
There's a lot of stuff I've seen on TV growing up as a kid. Like we talked about all the shit we watched growing up all the time. And there's always some case about somebody dying and going to heaven and seeing angels and their loved ones telling them to go back because it's not their time. And I mean, that's like, whoa, cool. That's crazy. And that's usually what you hear in this country. And we've done shows covering that. But we've also talked a lot about that off the air. And you were the one who really made me understand that and consider and ponder that. It's like, well, what is the guy from the small island that's never heard about Jesus? What does he see when he dies? You know, so to me, a lot of my opinions have changed on that stuff. You know, knowing that when somebody dies and they see angels, it's because they've been brought up with that imagery, and that's probably their religion. You know, but I don't know. I don't know. I want to hear stories from people who are like Satanists who died and were brought back to life to see what they say. But I'm curious to hear what you're going to talk about, because certain parts of the brain doing that, you know, that's kind of an interesting thing, because the brain is so goddamn weird to me. I'm fascinated by what the human brain does.
I first came upon the idea of this it's probably been close to 25 years now. But I was working at this job. I was customer service / fraud claim specialist at a bank that no longer exists. But it was my first job out of college, and I was working second shift. So I'd get in at 3:30, and then from like 3:30 to 8, I would just do regular customer service for the bank. And then after 8, I would only take fraud claims unless there was an overflow of calls. Then they would get routed to me. But I was supposed to be open specifically for fraud claims. So after 8 o'clock, I would work till midnight. So after 8 o'clock, I had a lot of downtime. So I'd read a lot of books and surf the internet and read, about paranormal shit. So one of these, I used to read all these stories by this author named Tom Slemen, and I think I've talked about him on the show before. He was a guy that I read so many crazy stories about him, or from him, that I guess he retells stories. So like he'll take an event and then he kind of puts like his author spin on it. Not that he changes the story, but he'll word things so that it plays better, so to speak. But I remember he wrote this story about this office building that was supposed to have been haunted, and people would be seeing like shadow figures. They would hear things moving, footsteps, vibrations, things like that. That they couldn't explain, flashes of light. And then at some point they found out that there was a mechanical issue with, I think it was the furnace or the boiler or something like that. And after it was repaired, all activity ceased. And so they started looking into it, and it wasn't confirmed, but they were speculating that the issue with the furnace was there was a part that was loose and that it was creating this vibration, and the vibration was causing people to experience paranormal activity when really there wasn't anything going on. It was just the way the vibration was playing on their brain. And that always kind of fascinated me, because I mean, think back to like things like electroshock therapy, where they're shocking the brain. to manipulate the patient to get certain results. And it's supposed to be a pleasurable experience. It just looks violent and scary. But I guess when you're undergoing electroshock therapy, it's actually pretty therapeutic. But I've never had it done, so what do I know? But that was my first experience with that, and it's like the same. It opened up the same questions in me that things like paranormal experiences and spiritual experiences while under the influence of psychedelics. Are you having these experiences because you're under the influence of psychedelics, or does the psychedelics allow you to open up to these experiences? And it's kind of the same thing with manipulation of the brain, because either way, no, if you're looking at psychedelics, it's messing with your brain chemistry. And if you are manipulating your brain with electric frequencies or magnetism or whatever, you're messing with the way that your brain is functioning. So are you getting the brain scramblies and you're just bullshit is being created around you, or are you just open to it? And that's to me is the bigger question, because with a lot of these experiments, there's varying results. As you would expect, everyone's brain works differently, just like with psychedelics. Different people will react differently to the same exact dose of something, and it's all in the way that your brain chemistry is, and the way that your body is. But there's been a lot of studies done on this. There's one thing called TMS, which is transcranial magnetic stimulation. And this has been widely used in neuroscience to try to stimulate specific brain regions. And what they do is use high frequency magnetic pulses to affect sensory perception and neural processing in the patients. But the studies have shown that those that are undergoing the stimulation to their brain, they've had reports of phantom flashes of light as well as auditory hallucinations. And the auditory hallucinations were found when they specifically target the visual or auditory cortex. For some reason, even when they target the visual cortex, the auditory hallucinations will come up. So they have shown that this sort of thing does have some effect. There was also a doctor named Robert Heath who came up with what he dubbed the DBS, which stands for deep brain stimulation. And this was in the 50s. He did it in the 50s, 60s, and into the 70s. But what he would do is implant electrodes directly into the brain of his patients. And he would use electrical stimulation to study the pleasure and sensory effects that the electrical stimulation would have on the electrodes. And he found that he was by manipulating the electrodes with electrical stimulation, he was able to, his patients were seen to have reported having auditory hallucinations, as well as strange sensations in their body through the manipulation of the electrical stimulation in the electrodes. So again, he's able to manipulate the brain into hearing things that aren't actually there, which is something that's seen in hauntings, or I shouldn't say seen, reported in hauntings, people hearing voices where there should be no voices. Some people also report seeing flashes of light, and in a lot of poltergeist cases, that's a early indicator is the flashing lights. But there's just so many of these studies that are focused on manipulating parts of the brain. There's a auditory cortex stimulation. There was a study done by Dr. Penfield and Dr. Asmussen in the 1950s, where they were specifically working on patients with epilepsy. And what they were doing was mapping the auditory cortex by electrically stimulating it. And this would produce strange auditory sensations in the patients, but they would also report hearing buzzing and voices. So there's a lot of repeat of this being able to manipulate the brain to basically create auditory hallucinations. But the main one that I wanted to talk about was the God helmet, which was also known as the Corin helmet. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
So it gets a lot of you hear the name God helmet, and it gets a lot of I guess it reaches kind of a mythical status.
You know what? Now that I think about it, I have heard of this and have always actively avoided kind of digging into it because it's called the God helmet. I almost don't want to know what.
It's so you hear a name like the God helmet and you're expecting something like that fucking thrown Batman set on to see who Joker is. You know, like something that's going to give you all knowledge. It's nothing like that at all. And it wasn't even developed as a means to have a spiritual experience. It was kind of a byproduct of it. But people that have used it, they have reported having auditory and visual hallucinations. They would get the feeling of a presence being in the room with them. Some would feel a sense of enlightenment almost. But that wasn't the purpose for it. The purpose that it was originally designed for was to test a bunch of theories that neuroscientist Michael Persinger was working on. The helmet itself was developed by neurophysical researcher Stanley Corin, which was why it's originally called the Corin helmet, with Michael Persinger. And they got the idea to build this to research and study creativity and religious experience with stimulation of the temporal lobes. So that was the original thought there. But one of Persinger's hypotheses, what is the plural of hypothesis? Is it hypotheses?
Hypotheses?
Hypothesis. Yeah, let's say hypotheses. The first one he was working on was the vectoral hemisphericity hypothesis. And the idea of that hypothesis was that the human, each individual, like the thing that makes you, has two components. And one is stored on the right hemisphere of the brain, one is stored on the left hemisphere of the brain. And he hypothesized that the left hemisphere is, or he didn't hypothesize, part of the hypothesis was that the left hemisphere is the dominant side. So what he was trying to do was manipulate the hemispheres of the brain to kind of change the way that the person's self was being presented. So rather than having the left side be dominant, he would make them work equally, or he would manipulate the right side more. But Persinger and Corin developed this helmet so that they could create conditions where they would be able to specifically manipulate and disrupt hemispheres of the brain. So that was the first thing they wanted to test. The second thing that they were testing was the communication between the right and left sides of the brain. and they wanted to see what would happen if you would disrupt that communication. And what they found was that, or what they're trying to prove was that the subordinate side of the brain, which would be traditionally the right hemisphere, would begin to creep into the thought processes of the left side, and what they would try to see what would happen if they were able to induce that in a person's brain. And the third thing that they wanted to look into was what they called visitor experiences. And this was kind of what they were fucking with to replicate paranormal experiences. But they were also looking into potentially deja vu, past life memories, communication with the dead, things like that. And this was actually based on a theory by Dr. Julian Jaynes, who was an American psychologist. But he had an idea called bicameral mentality. And this was a theory that related to human ancestry and the development of emotions, and the idea that emotions maybe didn't stem from the minds of the experiencer, but were actions of an external source like gods or spirits. So the paranormal thing was, it wasn't the first purpose. It was kind of like, well, we've got this, let's see if we can also manipulate this. So the helmet itself, for having a name like the God helmet, was kind of laughable. What it was an old snowmobile helmet that has these magnets placed in it, they're electromagnetics, specifically called solenoids, and they have it set up inside the snowmobile helmet in kind of like a helix sort of shape, like kind of weaving in and out. And it's placed, or the helmet obviously is placed over the head, but where these solenoids are, they're specifically over the temporal lobe. And then it produces magnetic fields that are actually, they're more on the weak side of things. I think that they said it was about as powerful a magnet as you would find in ordinary telephone landline. So not a cell phone, like a landline where there's no electricity that really flows through it. But so it's very small amount, but it's a specific type of electromagnetism that allows him to hit the brain. And then it creates these magnetic fields which are disrupt the communication within the brain. And when they, in order to rule out any outside influence, they would have the patient sit down in an acoustic chamber, but the acoustic chamber was set up to also be a Faraday cage. For those that don't know what a Faraday cage is, it's basically a thing that blocks out all outside electromagnetic frequencies and radio transmissions, things like that. So the only radiation that would be allowed inside the Faraday cage is the Earth's magnetic field, and that's it. So the reason he wanted to do this was, one, to rule out any outside interference, but Persinger also wanted to utilize the Faraday cage because it would allow him to use the God helmet to also investigate the effects of geomagnetism on the human brain.
Okay.
So he conducted a bunch of these tests. Most of the reports that came from people that are his test subjects, I guess we'll say, reported that they sensed a presence in the room. What these presences were differed from individual to individual. Some thought that the presence in the room was an angel, like a guardian type thing. Others had the feeling that it was a deceased loved one, whether it be friend or family, but someone who had died who is now there in the room with them. There was also some experiencers that they had a spiritual experience with a being that they felt was God or a representation of God. But in his test reports, Persinger said that at least 80% of the participants that he ran through the God helmet experienced a presence inside the room with them.
Damn, 80%?
80%.
Wow.
And then he said in the other 20%, there were some in there that said that they felt that there was another consciousness or a sentient being that was there somehow. But he had, he felt confident enough that he allowed people to come in and he would run the tests on them. So are you familiar with Richard Dawkins?
No.
He's well known for being a big debunker. He wrote a book called The God Delusion, basically debunking God. But he's an evolutionary biologist. But he's very outspoken. But anyway, they had him come in as part of a BBC documentary. And he said that he didn't sense any presence while he was there, but he did get a slightly dizzy, tingling feeling. And he said he felt strange and had sensation in his limbs and changes in his breathing while the helmet was on. But he said, he joked at the end, and he said, it felt pretty much as though I was in a room in total darkness with a helmet on my head and pleasantly relaxed. Yeah, but others have had considerably different experiences. There is a researcher named Susan Blackmore who, to be fair, is a parapsychology researcher, so do with that what you will. But she went into the lab and had the experiment done to her. And she said it was one of the most extraordinary experiences she ever had, and that she thought it would be very surprising if it came out that this was a placebo effect. Then in 99, Persinger had Jack Hitt, who is a writer for Wired magazine, and he had him come in, and in the debriefing, he had asked him a series of questions that kind of seemed like nonsense, and it was all relating to things that he did not experience. But he said he did have a fairly convincing out-of-body experience while undergoing this experiment. But he said based on the hype that went into it before he went in, he still left feeling disappointed. He was expecting a lot more out of it, I guess.
I don't know. So out-of-body experiences are just run-of-the-mill for this guy.
I guess, yeah. It's not enough. Where's the presence in the room?
I want to talk to God.
Yeah, for real. It's the God helmet, right? But things like this really get to me, though, because you've got this one, well, I should say these two scientists that worked on this, but they're doing these experiments and reporting all these results. You'd think it would be easy for another group of scientists to do the same experiments and get the same results. Like, that would indicate that it's not bullshit, right?
Yeah.
But this was attempted. In 2004, there was a group of Swedish researchers that attempted to duplicate the experiments, and they were doing it under double-blind conditions. But they were not able to reproduce the effect. They actually published their study, and they concluded that the presence or absence of the magnetic field indicated no relationship with any religious, paranormal, or spiritual experiences. they suggested that the experiences had by the participants were predetermined, I guess. Well, I shouldn't say predetermined, but they like anyone who had a proclivity towards believing that they would have an experience seemed to have an experience.
Right.
So that's why I mentioned earlier, take the parapsychology researcher, her experience, take that with a grain of salt, because she's already into that sort of thing. So she would seem to be more likely to have the experience than someone who went into it thinking that it's just going to vibrate their brain and that's it. But Persinger took issue with them, and he claimed that they didn't do it exactly like he did it. And because they didn't replicate all the conditions that he had set up and do the experiment exactly the way he did it, they didn't get the results that he got. And apparently he also argued that they didn't maintain the magnetic fields for long enough to produce the effect that he was having. But this was answered with a rebuttal saying that before the experiments took place, this team presented their methodology to Persinger, and he agreed to it. He agreed with it all. And so because of this, they stand by their original experiment, and they think that it is, I don't want to say bullshit, but bullshit. They think it's bullshit.
Why is he trying to poo-poo their shit all of a sudden?
Well, because they didn't get the results that he got. So he's saying that they didn't duplicate his process exactly. And they're saying, well, we went over this with him beforehand, and he said it was cool. So did he sabotage it and say, yeah, that's cool? Then he's like, no, those fools, they didn't do it long enough. You know, like I feel like it would be very easy to be like, okay, why don't we send one of our guys to your lab and you can show us how it's done, and then we'll do it again. Or he goes to their lab and shows them how it's done and they can do it again. And why is there only one team that has replicated it?
Yeah, that's kind of interesting, you know, but especially if they had another team try to replicate it, and they had the dudes who did the first helmets thumbs up with how they were going to do it, and it failed. To me, that's like, whoa, it's not very much of a whoa. that guy must have had something special. It just kind of seems like that guy was full of shit.
Yeah. I don't know, but the Persinger and some of his friends were so convinced that this worked, they developed a second device named the octopus. And this one uses solenoids around the entire brain instead of just the temporal lobe. And it circles the brain just above the ears, and it's supposed to allow them to manipulate all sorts of parts of your brain. Now here's the cool part, or maybe the bullshit part. I guess it depends on what you think of Persinger as a individual, but there are commercial versions of the God helmet and the octopus available for purchase.
What?
Yeah. Persinger's research assistant, Todd Murphy, has them for sale. And he claims that these devices are able to change emotional states, and they can also be used in enhancing meditation and generating altered states of consciousness. So
what do you think about that? I mean, as somebody who has done stuff that has caused altered states of consciousness, would you try this guy's?
Fuck yeah, I would try it. If any of our patrons want to buy me a God helmet or octopus, I will do it live on one of our monthly meetups.
Oh yeah.
I will put it on and I will fucking speak the word of God to all of you. I'm not even lying. I will absolutely do it.
We got to ask him about like winning lotto numbers and shit while he's got the helmet on.
No.
Yes.
I will only do it for good. We will not help the powers of capitalism. The God helmet has a strictly uncapitalistic message. I don't want to say it's a socialistic message because, that's a whole thing too, but it's certainly not capitalist. And the God helmet will tell you that money is an illusion. And I know that without even wearing the God helmet. But if you give me the God helmet, I'll probably say it in a cool, echoey voice.
Right.
And my eyes will be glowing.
Yeah, we definitely have to put the reverb on your mic when you do that on the Hangout.
Yeah. So, if you want to get on the Patreon, donate some money, I'll buy a God helmet or an octopus or both. You guys, once we gather the money, we'll put a poll up in Patreon, and you guys can tell me which you'd prefer me to use. And
right.
I will brain fuck the shit out of myself.
If you're feeling extra fancy, he'll get both, put them on at the same time, and become Octo God.
Fuck. Yeah. I will be Octo God, and somehow I become a fucking psychic Spider-Man villain. Or Batman villain. I could just give me a cool rogues gallery to be a part of.
I was saying, I think if this comes to fruition, this is how you join over to evil time traveling Barack Obama's side. You're just like, I'm too powerful.
Maybe
now.
I even overtake evil time traveling Barack Obama. Maybe I become evil time traveling What Cast Mike. You never know.
Yeah, holy shit.
Yeah, the world would be a scary place, guys. I don't think you want me to have that kind of power. That being said, give me the God helmet. Give me the God helmet.
Yikes. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I just recently saw this thing where this gentleman had, I forget the name of the disease he has, and I feel like an asshole because of it. But it's where, your muscles twitch around, you have a hard time speaking.
Parkinson's?
It was something else, but it was very much like Parkinson's. And I'm pretty familiar with Parkinson's, so it was something like that. And he was a musician, and he demonstrates, the best he can, because he's got a pretty severe case, that he had a certain tuning fork, and he hit it and put it on his chest, and he literally just boom stopped and went totally normal. And that tuning fork only rings out for so long, and as soon as he took it away, it just started right back up. So him and an inventor buddy of his produced the speaker that produces the same tone, and it goes on a harness on his chest, and he turns it on, and it just basically stops the disease, or the physical aspects of it anyway. It's remarkable to see.
I had a friend who had pretty severe, well, he still has pretty severe MS. And he one night took a bunch of acid, and he hadn't, his grip is fucked up, and he shakes a lot. He hasn't been able to write his name in years. And he took a bunch of acid, and his shakes went away, and he was able to sign his name and write and hold a pen. It was crazy.
That's very interesting. I'm sure they've done studying in that area that they don't tell us about. They're like, just dump some acid, it'll cure a bunch of diseases.
Yeah, they probably found out a bunch of that shit during MK Ultra.
Yeah.
They're like, what else can acid do? If it doesn't work in mind control, but what does it work in? I don't know. I go back and forth on this because obviously I don't have the God helmet yet, so I can't talk about experiences with that yet. But I can talk about experiences with psychedelics and having had spiritual experiences under the influence of psychedelics. I can tell you at the time, it absolutely feels like it's 100% real. Like you're aware that you're under the influence of psychedelics, but also you're experiencing this cosmic insanity. And it's weird having that awareness that you are under the influence, but also having this experience that just seems to be truthful and honest and real and not a product of the psychedelic. It seems to be something that's happening as a result of the psychedelics, but not a product of it. So more like you're being opened up to it. But then afterwards, when you go back to being normal, there's no way to really say because you were experiencing it while you were under the influence. So you can't go back and be like, well, if I wasn't under the influence, did that really still happen? Or, because that's what create or started the whole thing to begin with. So I really don't know, even having those experiences, if those experiences were actually real and my brain chemistry allowed me to have that experience, or if it was the psychedelics that were giving me the experience. I don't know. But one thing I do find interesting, and I haven't had this experience myself, but one thing that I have heard about is people having the same experience, is specifically taking DMT. And I kind of had an experience similar to that on mushrooms, where like one thing that people on DMT often report is this like colorful geometry that is basically the entire universe. Not like the stars and constellations, but like just infinite geometry. And I had that to a certain extent, but it was infinite geometry made up to look like the underside of a spider that went on for infinity.
Right, I remember you mentioning this.
Yeah. Very strange experience. And especially when you're able to still witness the world around you while also experiencing that at the same time. It's very crazy experience. But it felt like, I didn't feel like I had done mushrooms. I don't even know how many times, so many times. And I never had an experience like that. But on this particular night, and I've taken more mushrooms than I took that night. And for whatever reason, that night, the amount of mushrooms I took, and I guess the way my brain was set up, I don't know, but it was like the perfect storm, and it created this experience where I was sitting there, and I was seeing this infinite spider geometry while my partner was talking about gardening and just puttering around her front yard. She was completely sober at the time. And I remember having this experience with what I called the spider god, while also thinking about what she was saying and not being able to communicate directly with her, but being able to understand what she was saying, and having a part of myself while I'm having this spiritual experience also be aware enough to say, to think in my head, why is she talking about this stupid earthly stuff when I'm on a completely different dimension right now?
The spider god's here.
Yeah. It was a very weird experience, but was it the mushrooms? Maybe. Could be. But it's interesting that it was a similar experience to what a lot of people report on DMT.
Right.
And all I did was take and ate the mushrooms. I've taken more mushrooms than that and had less of an experience. So I don't know. I don't really know what to make of it.
If you had to think back and had to pick something, what could have influenced that into happening that night?
Literally nothing. Like it was kind of a spur of the moment thing. My friend had many months before had given me a bunch of mushrooms, and I had taken them periodically, never had an experience like that. And for whatever reason that night I had an eighth left, and I'm like, I'm going to finish them. I'm going to take them. So I did. And it really was just like a spur of the moment thing. And like I said, I had taken these exact mushrooms many times. Like this wasn't my first go around with this particular batch. Like I had probably taken them 3 times before.
Wow. The same batch.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And never had this experience. And for whatever reason on that night, the way it hit me, it really affected me. And I had this insane experience, and then, it wore off. I slowly came back. I mean, that experience itself, like when you take mushrooms, especially like an eighth or a quarter of mushrooms, you're going to be feeling the effects of mushrooms for like probably 4 or 5 hours, maybe 6 hours. But the trip itself is really only going to last like a couple hours. And you're really only going to like that whole spider experience was maybe half hour, but it seemed much longer and much more profound. And then after that, like that was the peak of my trip, and then I started to come down a little bit, and I was kind of like riding off of that experience for a while, and like so I was just sitting outside and kind of letting that roll over my brain and try to make sense of it. But that particular experience, it was probably only a half hour, if I had to guess, out of the entire evening.
A half hour is pretty profane. That's a long time.
Yeah.
To be kicking it with the spider god.
Right.
Which,
and it wasn't even like anything was being communicated to me. It was more just like a sense of infinity, but also like, I guess, unity or like communion with infinity, which sounds super cliche, I know, but there wasn't like any message or anything. It was just like this sense that I'm part of everything. And it wasn't like, and I'm not an arachnophobe, but at the same time, like if I was confronted by a spider god, I think I'd be a little intimidated. And I wasn't uncomfortable or scared at all. In fact, I was hoping after that, while I was still tripping, that I would see a spider and be able to hang out with it and like, you know, pick it up and stuff. But I did not see any spiders that evening, unfortunately.
Would you try to talk to that spider for like an hour or so?
Give me your secrets. Meanwhile, it's like, I just want to go back to my web. Leave me alone.
Bring me your god.
I met your god. He sends his regards. Where's my moth?
Yeah, I've always.
But even like I said, I don't know what the answer is there, and I think it's because my opinion on it is more because I want it to be this way. But I feel like that stuff opens your brain up instead of induces it. I feel like it's a way to open your brain up. The electricity and magnetism, I don't know about that. I don't know. I can't comment on that. Again, I don't have the God helmet yet, but once everyone joins Patreon and donates money to my God helmet fund, I will get the God helmet, and I'll let you know. I'll let you know what I think.
Do I actually want to see how much this thing is? You should look it up.
Yeah, I will. I'll look it up. We'll slap the price tag in Patreon, and you guys can buy it for me.
We'll be like the modern kids and do like a live stream.
Yeah. Yes, we will live stream the God helmet, and it's going to end up being like Late Night with the Devil.
Oh no, Mike's gonna rip his own skin off to reveal like a purple dragon man. It's gonna be nuts.
Yeah. So if that's your thing, donate to the cause, buddy.
Thank you for listening to the Whatcast. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, iTunes, and YouTube. Enjoy the podcast. Get yourself a Whatcast t-shirt or a sticker pack. Who was that dude on that one episode? Try the links in Homie's page. All this and more can be found at www.thewhatcasters.com. Thanks again for listening and have a great week.
not ready. But we will still save you. In your quest for self-destruction, you will send up more satellites. And we will be there, waiting to come again.